Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Fallen London. In today's episode we are going to be looking at the exceptional story for May, the Ballad of Johnny Croak. A curious collection of earnest academics and elderly mushroom farmers have monopolised a corner of Doubt Street to protest the construction of Mr. Fire's new factory. It's not a violent affair, it's the kind of protest that hands out brightly coloured explanatory pamphlets and watches anxiously to see if people read them. Their grammar is flawless, their apologies for taking your time regretful. Nevertheless, the Neddy men are closing in, clubs at the ready. Someone has to keep the peace. So we have three options here. We can defend the protests from Mr. Fire's thugs. He'll keep the brutes at bay with fist and boot. We can persuade the Neddy men to leave the protesters alone. Surely the Neddy men have other people to bully. No candidates come to mind, but you can encourage them to exercise their imaginations. Or we can walk briskly away as the Neddy men close in. Not your protest, not your pamphlets. Let's try and persuade the Neddy men to leave them alone. A protest of this size and temperament apparently only warrants 5 Neddy men. They pause when you interpose yourself between them and the nervously smiling protesters, who insist on trying to explain themselves as though they'll make a jot of difference. You ask them to think about what they're doing. Is this rabble really worth their time? If anything, they're making the common citizenry less interested in enacting any kind of reform. The Neddy men discuss this with one another. A consensus is reached. Pack up this in an hour, grunts the biggest thug, pointing at the pamphlets. They trudge away. Thank you, mutters one of the protesters. An old man in a flat cap. He hands you a pamphlet. It's terrible what they're doing. The new factory is going to be awful for the wildlife of the marshes. A priceless habitat. Destroyed. Okay. Visit the Season of Endeavour card to unlock the story. Okay, let's unlock the Ballad of Johnny Croak. An occurrence, your frogs, fear and factory quality is now 2. Ooh, it begins with a murder in progress. Anywhere in London. A murder in progress. A foggy street, silent but for the distant echo of footsteps. Rows of darkened windows on either side, the flickering light of gas lamps. The street is almost empty. Only a woman is visible, walking briskly, her hair in a tight bun, a satchel over one shoulder. The atmosphere feels as taut as violin string. Then you see it, in the darkness of an alley. Gleaming eyes reflecting the gaslight, the shadow of a bulky weapon pointed in her direction. We have a couple of options here. We can leap to her defense. You'll stand in the way of the bolt if needs be. This is the daring choice. We can shout a warning, raise the hue and cry, or we can watch with detached interest. How is this going to resolve itself? I think we shall leap to her defense, poor woman. You leap between the woman and her would-be murderer with a roar of defiance. Without a moment's hesitation, the assassin stows away their weapon and scrambles up a drainpipe, gone as quickly as they appeared. Before you can make to chase the murder down, the young woman grabs your arm. What's the matter? She asks. She didn't even notice the figure in the shadows. You explain as best you can, and her eyes widen. I knew it, mutters the rightfully paranoid forewoman. Someone's taken a contract on my life. It was only a matter of time until I was next. Next? My colleagues have been similarly targeted, she says briefly. Other workers at the factory. She looks you up and down. You seem to know how to handle yourself better than anyone else I can find on short notice around here. At least, I need your help. Otherwise, I'm not long for this world. When my colleagues were killed, they didn't come back. Ah, so this assassin deals the permanent variety of death. Okay, well, we can either agree or we can agree if we get paid. I think I'll just agree. Of course you can help. Her life is at stake. She nods, tucking a strand of stray hair back into her bun. Excellent. I have no idea why this assassin is after my colleagues and I. All I do is work at a factory. Bookkeeping. Clerical work. She walks a short way down the assassin's alleyway, then glances up at the drainpipe. The killer climbed up here, did they not? Perhaps they left something behind. The rightfully paranoid forewoman is being targeted by an assassin. She doesn't know why or who. All she knows is that she's not the first to be targeted. Who could be going after her? The who must first be answered. After that, the why. So we can search the rooftops. The assassin made their escape upwards. You're unlikely to catch them now, but perhaps they left a trace. After a quick, if undignified clamber, you are up among the rooftops. Picking your way between chimneys and slipping on fog-slick roof slates, you uncover the most valuable clue of any murder mystery worth its salt. The weapon. Well, almost. It's a cache of wooden ammunition, cunningly concealed between a section of false roof tiles. By the look of them, they were designed to be fired from some kind of crossbow. How long did it take the assassin to carve out this hidey hole? The crossbow bolts look like to be of an unusual design. You do well to examine them more closely once your feet are back on solid ground. Okay, let's examine those bundles of bolts. Each one looks to have been carved by hand. They don't end in a point, but in an orb as big as a child's fist. Oof. The tips are rounded and seem to be hollow. You knock one against the wall to test if it is. To your surprise, you are greeted by a grieved ribbit. After a few more taps, the tip of the bolt shatters, and a small, violently orange frog falls to the floor. It croaks at you or reproach, and hops down a nearby drain. Why is someone trying to shoot frogs at the forewoman? Okay, are they poisonous frogs? How interesting. Let's identify the murder weapon. You've discovered a cache of crossbow bolts hidden beneath a section of rooftop tiles. Each conceals a tiny, virulent frog. You discuss your findings with the rightfully paranoid forewoman. She professes bafflement. It's a distinct weapon. It may be enough to identify the culprit, if you find someone in the know. When you tell the forewoman this, she nods and hands you a card with her address. Come visit, she instructs you, when you've found out more. So we have favours with everyone, apparently, so we get to choose here. We can show the frog bolts to your criminal contacts. You shake the bolts under the nose of a canny thief of your acquaintance, causing a chorus of ribbits. Has she ever seen the like? Or we can show the frog bolts to the constabulary. They don't have time to deal with merely attempted murders. This is London, but they'll make an exception for you. Or we can buy a round of drinks at the slovenly gin house. When the beer is flowing, you'll ask if anyone knows anything about a frog-wielding assassin. I think I shall use my contacts in the constabulary, why not? The first constable you ask just laughs. Wiping merry tears from his eyes, he directs you to his sergeant. The sergeant looks troubled. He tells you not to handle the bolts and gloves. He directs you to another sergeant, old and grizzled, and a legend amongst constables and thieves alike. All I can give you is a name, mutters the old sergeant. Johnny Croak. The urchins know more. We're looking for Johnny Croak. Oh well, a conspiracy of urchins. It's not difficult to find a gathering of urchins in London. No, they're everywhere. They congregate raucously around public spectacles, crime scenes, and anyone performing a task that requires intense concentration. It is difficult, however, to find a group of urchins in the mood to converse, but a vague promise of remuneration is enough. Soon, you are surrounded by a circle of small, cynical faces. When you ask about Johnny Croak, they scowl. We won't say a word about anyone to anyone, pipes one. Okay, so we can either remind them what we've done for them in the past, thus using our urchin's favours that we have one of. You're not likely to turn anyone over to the constables, are you? You're on their side. Or I can offer a small bribe. A tournament of rat conkers is approaching, and they're critically short on equipment. In exchange for a little help, they'll tell you everything they know. Let's remind them what we've done for them in the past. Apparently, Johnny Croak is an urchin, an assassin, and a legend among his peer group. He keeps all the frogs in his coat, shouts one of the urchins. He killed a man in the middle of Dow Street and then vanished in a puff of toads, shouts another. Apparently, Croak goes after the nastier minions of Mr. Fires, especially Neddy men and tyrannical overseers. Lot of urchins working in those factories, says a small girl in a tattered coat earnestly. He's looking out for us. Goes after the bad uns. More importantly, according to the urchins, Johnny Croak kills them stone dead, for good. Something about the poison he uses, they reckon. Whoever he kills just doesn't come back. Wow. Good heavens! The very next morning, after speaking to the urchins, you awake to find a hideously vibrant frog sit ribbiting directly next to you. It throbs slowly, like a pustule. There is a mud-stained envelope tucked neatly beneath the frog. Oh dear, let's open the envelope. Gingerly, you reach for a coat hanger and gently shift the frog from its perch. In a near illegible scrawl, next one's poison, nosy. The bundle of crossbow bolts you retrieved from the rooftop seems to have gone missing as well. You should tell the rightfully paranoid foreman that you've definitely discovered the identity of the assassin. Foreman's house can be found in Watchmaker's Hill. Hey, to Watchmaker's Hill we go. When the map loads. There we go. Here we go. Return with a name. The rightfully paranoid forewoman's mansion sits on the edge of Bugsby's marshes. Her garden is shrouded by creeping mosses and toadstools that have encroached from the bog at her doorstep. She welcomes you inside and instructs her servant to make you a spot of tea. She apologizes for the pervasive smell of damp. The marshes will not be held at bay. But Mr. Fire's newest factory is being built nearby, she explains with a sigh. So I need to live somewhere close at hand. We can tell her the name of her would-be assassin. Johnny Croak. Definitely an urchin. Apparently also a dangerous killer. You tell her that she was probably targeted for being a foreman at one of Mr. Fire's factories. The urchins claim that Johnny Croak is hunting down Mr. Fire's employees as revenge for their treatment of their labourers. There's no justification, mutters the forewoman, sipping her mushroom tea with a wrinkled nose. He's a murderer and a villain, killing honest, hard-working folk for the crime of having made something of themselves. She asks you to watch over her for the next few days. The assassin is sure to try again. It'd be a good chance to catch him. And, of course, she'd prefer not to die if it's all the same to you. That makes sense. In the mornings, you meet her outside her marsh house. Two of London's most feared claymen, Jasper and Frank, stand in her garden like watchful statues. When did she hire them? She didn't mention anything about additional help. Each day she proceeds with her usual duties, travelling between factories and overseeing the construction in the marsh, occasionally pausing to reassure worried workers that the ominously clanking machines have been recently audited. Whatever else she claims, she's evidently no mere bookkeeper, nor merely a forewoman. We have quite a lot of things we could be doing here. An implausible bear trap? Oh, I don't have one of those. Oh, we can talk to Jasper and Frank. They're mooching around the forewoman's garden, playing cards and glaring at passers-by. What do they know about her? As always, they'll tell you for a price. Well, we have some diamonds. Let's find out. Jasper holds up the diamond and appraises it with an expert eye. What do we think about the forewoman, Frank? Just what comes to mind? Popular among bosses, says Frank without looking up from his cards. Efficient, disciplined, has a hand in the running of half the factories in London. They say she knows how to wring every last drop of sweat from her workers. Not an hour paid is wasted. Not an easy task. Like blood from a stone, agrees Jasper impassively. A woman makes enemies in her line of work, I imagine. Of course, Jasper. Frank deals a hand. Why else would we be here? Okay, well, let's follow her at a discreet distance. Keep an eye out for any assassination attempts, frog-based or otherwise. You follow the forewoman to smog-blanketed street just off Wolfstack Docks. A ceramic factory looms at the street's end. Smoke churns from its chimneys. Inside, she's taken a podium to address the factory floor. The machines still, their furious churning. The workers gather. She chooses her words with care, every phrase firm and scrumptiously polite. She tells the workers, without emotion, that half their pay from now on will be in vouchers that can only be spent at the factory's own shops, to ensure they eat well, she says. Suddenly, one of the two young, soot-covered workers pulls a crossbow from his overalls and takes aim across the whirring machinery. You spring from your hiding spot, knocking the weapon aside, and the assassin flees. "After him!" shouts the forewoman. But when you exit the factory, you find no trace. Even after hours of searching, he has disappeared as though he never was. Don't take this the wrong way, forewoman, but I think I might be on the side of the assassin. Victorian times, eh? How lovely. Well, we can test her food and drink, or we can intercept her post. Let's intercept her post. The forewoman's letters are of a uniform stripe. Dozens of letters from dozens of families begging for her clemency. Many are begging for a job, or for their jobs back. Others ask, hopefully, for more generous pay to cover their rent, or for reduced rent on the account of their pay. Could this be right? Are people renting space to live inside the factories where they work? Finally, you discover an obscenely bloated bullfrog concealed in a giant parcel. When you try to move it, the frog explodes with such force it crisps your hair and blackens your fingertips. Damn it. Okay. I love the way that the top option is to embark on a brief but passionate affair with the forewoman. Or we can search for Johnny Croak's hidey hole. Well, you know, we may as well embark on a brief and passionate affair with the forewoman. It's an option. She ushers you into her factory office with a secretive smile. In public, you are both the very picture of professionalism, except in the occasional moments where your hands brush and, for a heated moment, your eyes meet. In private, in her office, in her bedroom, in the quiet corners of a warehouse, you press against each other, hands roaming, lips touching, binding. The veneer cracks slightly. You discover a passion for the arts, small, regular donations to various charities, a propensity to complain about the indolence of the average Londoner, and the regrettable measures that must be taken to extract the requisite amount of daily work. It is not to last. The affair fizzles out like a dwindling Catherine wheel. It was a passing passion. After that, the forewoman is noticeably shorter of temper. One morning, she hurls a cup of boiling tea at her house servant and demands they clean up the resulting mess. Oh dear. Well, it started off well. Let's just test her food for poison as well, because we might as well do them all. The forewoman won't let you embark on a short-lived career as a food tester. You'll have to perform science. Before the forewoman sits down for a meal, you take her plate and run a series of experiments. Drops of dye are added, dishes are weighed and balanced, a morsel is fed to a rat. After all these tests, you take a final, cautious whiff. By the time you finish, the meal has invariably gone cold. When the attempt comes, it is far from subtle. You dip a spoon into her lunchtime stew, and lifting it, discover a small orange frog sitting happily in the puddle of meat chunks and mushroom slices. The forewoman stares at the frog, wrinkling her nose. "The kitchen staff will be fired," she declares. "There will be no references." Oh dear. Okay, so now we can discuss how to finally capture Johnny Croak. Or we can refuse to continue protecting the forewoman. Hypocrisy, tyranny, mistreatment of workers. You refuse to work for her anymore. She can afford to pay a bodyguard from her own pocket. This seems like quite the choice. Now, on a moral Real world level. I would refuse to work for this lady. I don't like tyrannical business owners. It's still a problem to this day. But on the other hand, it could be interesting to see how we can finally capture Johnny Croak. I think I am going to go with capturing Johnny Croak. Let's see what happens. Maybe it'll give us an option to reverse our choice if we find out that she's actually the devil. The foreman slides you a note, a name and address. One of my employees, a Neddy man. He has spotted an urchin following him. I suspect that, finding it too difficult to target me, Croak has switched victims. Perhaps you can find out how the boy's assassinations are so final. I will pay handsomely for this information. Okay, well, I think I will end the first episode here before we find out the secrets of Johnny Croak. Thank you very much for watching. This is a very interesting story. I'm enjoying it quite a lot. Please like, subscribe, let me know what you think. Your comments are greatly appreciated. And as always, I'll see you next time.